to stop worrying and love gamification. Please help me welcome Richard Durham.
That's funny. What Clinton didn't tell you is that a green cord is actually one of the first cords. So, and yes, as he said, I work for Kineo, which is our platinum sponsor in the back there, which means that if what I say doesn't move you out of the chairs, the large men that we hired will. And so I'm going to be talking about gamification, and this is very true. Loaded term for me, because as Clint said, I've got decades of experience designing analog games, and as a teacher, I've tried to incorporate them into learning over the years, and there are a lot of wrong ways to do it. And being that it's such a loaded term, and I know that you've probably heard that, I want to help shed a little light on what it is and some of the ways that it can be used effectively. Right? That's what I'd like to start. Then is at the very beginning of any game, in a dark room. PowerPoint up there. Right. So this is how most people's brains start when they see something. Hopefully we can fill it with things. So the first exposure you've got to any experience is a very important one, as you know. So let's just start right there. Exactly as I say. You can read this. It's just text on a screen, no fancy graphics, no nothing. And the question I've got for you is, what would you do in this situation? And I am actually asking you. This is going to be a bit more of a conversation. So if there's anybody out there, what would you do in this situation? What interaction would you think that you'd have available to you? Light fire, right? That's what you would hope to want to be able to do, otherwise you're going to be freezing. To light the fire. It's implicit in what's given to you. So if we get a button, a simple button that says light fire, perhaps we should click said button. Right? Sorry, select. So we do. We notice some changes. It's a bar. The text has changed. It's a title up at the top. What do we do now? There's one button. You might as well push it. Stoke the fire. Can I stoke the fire right now? How do you know? Because of the button. Yeah, the button was just doing a thing. And in fact, if you tried clicking the button at that time, it wouldn't do anything. The point is the interface itself, the game itself, is instructing you. Along the way, you're learning how the system works. You're learning a narrative. All of this is what games can do. And we're going to look at this in a little bit later, but there's still some play to have here. A ragged stranger has stumbled in. The possibilities are endless. And yet, what I can still do is one thing. So I'm going to stoke the fire. Uh-oh. A conflict. The wood is running out. There's some more information given to me. I'm now picking up some more and more context as we go. Did anybody notice anything else that appeared other than the sound form? Cool. So what are those locations? New to the system. You can interact with those exponentially. This is what games can. So I'm going to go. Let's go out to the silent forest. Oh, it's gray and cold. Maybe I shouldn't have stayed inside with a but I bet that I can get some wood here. In fact, I have one button. And that button tells me, in fact, that I can gather some wood when I'm out in the forest. Now I have a problem. I have a solution to said problem. I'm growing a game. I'm with tokens, things that are resources in a game. All of these are things that maybe will lead to points. Maybe I'll be getting a score. Maybe not. That's not the point of a game. Certainly you've used leaderboards and badges, and these are terms that hopefully you've heard of. And after you hear them enough, you start to say, okay, okay. And that's where I'm at now, which is why this talk is called Not Another Leaderboard, please, not another one. There's other things that games can do, and leaderboards are one of them, and a very useful one. So what I want to know is where to go from here. We're going to go onward to gamification. I use air quotes, the dreaded air quotes on this term, because gamification, if you were a game designer, is one of the most maligned terms you could possibly use. It is a weak gambling addiction-related term. Those games have 30-second loops of fun. And you just do it over and over and over again. You get a little squirt of melatonin, no, adrenaline, no, all of these things, serotonin in your brain, and it says this is a good job. There's more to games than gambling, although that is an important thing in games. So where we're going to be going into gamification is how it's used in education. Right? And so this is me, not another leaderboard, and this is probably the most serious picture I've taken in the last few years, so it's really not that easy to get a good picture of me, I'm sorry. But gamification in games can solve a lot of the problems that we've got in learning. And as Nigel put so emphatically and effectively earlier today, we have a textbook problem. And we're in the 21st century, and we still have a textbook. As I said, I used to be a teacher, and I had a student named Marco who was a locker right outside of my classroom. And every day after school, I would see poor Marco. This guy was about this tall. Poor Marco lugging a bag of books the size of him at home. And I'd ask Marco, what are you doing with those books? And he said, well, I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot of reading. He was treating them like references. He was treating them like a teacher in their own right. But it was a huge stack of books. And if that wasn't you in school, you probably knew someone who was like that. And here we are in the 21st century, and what are we doing with our e-learning but still giving them piles of electronic textbooks? Maybe not literal ones, but e-learning modules that are as dry as a textbook, e-learning modules that we just say, here's 5 hours of training, go do it. It's a textbook. You're loading their bags. You're not engaging them. You're not using their own motivations. Unless you're poor Marco who loved reading those textbooks, you're going to get only a small percentage of people who are engaged. So what we really want is engagement, not gambling addiction engagement, because then they're addicted to the gambling, they're not addicted. What we want are people, as I'm sure all of you want learners, you want people who are employees, who are driven to improve themselves. Am I right? You don't want them just doing the compliance to do it. You don't want paying some 12-year-old child, as Nigel put this morning, paying some 12-year-old child to do the learning for them because it's the easiest way out. They're gaming you. Why don't we do it, turn it around? So, games. Here's our agenda real quick. Dark room. That's a real thing. I adapted that for this. But if you go to a dark room and search it from Doublespeak Games, you'll find that text adventure. And that's all it is. It's a text adventure. I'll revisit it a little bit later, but it's probably one of the more engaging games that come out in the last few years, and it's nothing but text. I encourage you to look it up. It's free to play on a browser, and you can download it on iOS $3.99. There you go. Okay, so what is gamification really? All right, so this term, before we get into it too much, needs to be defined a little. If you haven't been asked to define it before, here's one we'll toss out at you. It's a commonly used one. It's the use of game thinking and game mechanics in a non-game context in order to engage users and solve problems. Sounds great. I could put that in a dictionary, except that I've always been told never to use the word in the definition that you're defining. And here we are saying game thinking, game mechanics, and non-game context about gamification. There's one term, the game, that we haven't really defined. What games are. And I'm sure a lot of you have a conception of what games are already. And it's been a while, probably about 20 minutes since you've been up, really, since so why don't we guys stand up for a few minutes again. I'd like you just to talk with the people around you, share some examples of some games, see if you can come up with a definition that you can agree upon, that you're at least okay with. It doesn't have to be the golden standard. Just take a few minutes. Just want to hear. Moving, so you... Just listening, don't mind me. I just want to see. What are you talking about? Stories are good. You like some stories. They do, especially when they start branching, those stories. What's a game? What's a game?
You just did it.
Oh, you just did it.
Rules that you're either aware of or not aware of.
Sure. Hopefully you're aware of it.
Well, sometimes they're embedded, so
Yeah.
they're not clear. But
Like a dark room.
they're absolutely clear,
Yeah,
right? Dark
exactly.
room. An end in mind, so that you win or lose, and a challenge and something that's enjoyable and fun. So an enjoyable and fun challenge
fun.
based around rules
That you can lose.
with an end in mind.
I like that. Sounds pretty good.
Is that okay?
You guys have dissected. All right, that's perfect. Cool. I think I've got some 3 ones. That's good. What's you two? What are games? If I can have your attention again right up back here. Interesting definitions out there, some very well thought out. So when I went around, I heard about 4 or 5 different definitions of games and a lot of examples of games that you guys have been experienced with. But one of the common things that I heard out there was that they have rules, whether you know them or not, and that there's usually a goal in mind. You can reward these goals, of course, but that these rules, these goals, are something you can then lose. Right? These are some of the more common things that I heard. So here's some other definitions of games, and you may be surprised that in game studies, and it is a thing, in fact, they have a fancy term for it, ludology, that there is no universally accepted academic definition. And that's fine. It's still a young science in terms of a study. I don't really call it a science, but you'll see Jane McGonigal, who's done a number of TED Talks too, which I highly recommend. She kind of gets to the games or systems with rules, which is what you guys have defined it at. Some people say that they are conflicts that the players are engaging in, which leads more to a narrative type of a definition. And then you have ones that it's just an art, and you have a goal. It's very the hippy-dippy approach, you might say. But his games are quite telling. He developed a game about the Columbine school shooting from many decades ago now, and it caused quite a controversy at the time. But man, did he get a message across. It was an art, right, to him. He had a goal. His goal was to raise awareness. Right? So for our definition that we're going to use today, I specifically chose Dr. Bartle's, and I say doctor because it makes him sound very important, because it uses the word play as well. And play is, to me, an integral part to games. And I don't mean play necessarily as we were having fun and tossing a ball around. I mean play as a human interaction, a human thing as mammals that we do. To learn is by playing. It's what happens when you freely and knowingly bound your behavior to a set of rules in the hope of gaining some benefit, a goal, you might say. And you can lose them because there are rules. These are implicit. This is a great definition because it implies a lot of things. It implies that you're freely and knowingly doing it. You're not being told that you're playing a game and then that's it. You ever been playing that game where someone races to the car and they say, shotgun, right? And they go to the car. You didn't know you were playing. You didn't until they yelled that. It's not really fun. Then this bound your behavior to a set of rules. There's a thing, research back in the 20s by Huizinga. He was a researcher who studied play as it related to culture. And he found that there's a thing called the magic circle. Basically, it's a set of rules in which you are engaging in that dictate a certain set of behaviors. Churches operate on this principle as well. Libraries operate on this set of principles. Anytime you go to a location where there's a certain set of expected behaviors, you're entering a kind of magic circle. Could you imagine going to the library and then having somebody running around the library, arms in the air, yelling? Naughty, naughty, right? You just have this instinct to do it, one, because it's a quiet environment. There's an implicit rule set to operating in the library. Anybody breaking it is cheating. This is important because a lot of the times when we tell somebody something is valued, we score it, particularly in games and gamification. we score tests in our assessments because we want people to value the knowledge that we're getting. But what we're really telling them is that you have right answers, and that's what we want, no matter how you get it. And so you'll get people who game the system. They're breaking the rules, they're cheating, and you as the designer will be very upset that they paid a 12-year-old to take that compliance training. But they're not. They got a good score. So we got to find ways to motivate them to play within the rules instead of just telling them you're playing in this game now. Right? This is what we're going to look at. So how are games used now? This is a question I could open up to you, but I don't want to stress your vocal cords by talking to each other too much. So there are plenty of examples. I heard some people talking about things like drag and drop activities as games. But I'm thinking more broadly, outside of the e-learning kind of realm, what are some games that we know, that we use all the time? Come up with a few examples off the top of our head. Any mobile game that we use, any apps, right, online. Is there any other examples you guys know or aware of that are quite different from mobile games? Yeah, general board games that you buy for your kids, or if you're me, who ruffles their feathers whenever somebody says for your kids, because I play board games quite a bit still. Not just for kids. So, you're right, board games, these leisure activities. Hello. Right. Games are frivolous. They're often thought of as frivolous. There's silly things like this picture of a dog stuck in a cheesy buff. Well, they don't need to be that frivolous, though. Picture. That dog is adorable. The first tip that I can give you as designers when it comes to gamification is one you should already be doing already, which is get a hold of your outcomes. You know what your outcomes are. Of course, you do. But this isn't as clear-cut as you might think, because there's outcomes that you have, and there's outcomes the learner has. Very different outcomes, possibly. For instance, Was It Trouble is a game that's actually been studied. It's by Brainquake. It was studied by Harvard University, where they looked at how does it improve students, and granted these were children because it was simple arithmetic, but how does it improve their scores? And they did a rigorous study where they compared, they had control groups, so it was actual science, but what they were getting at was if they use this app for a little while, does it improve their test scores? No other differences. And they found that it did, significantly, by about 20%. They were able to do the arithmetic better. And the reason for that is because it wasn't about asking kids to say 15 minus 7, good, 15 minus 8, great, 3 minus 2, 96 minus 4. It wasn't drilling them, because they're getting on with the symbology. They're not really learning arithmetic. They're not learning the numbers. So the outcome with Was It Trouble as a game was knowing that what we wanted kids to do was have a better sense of how numbers relate to each other. So you turn those little dials down there, and it turns the bigger dial at top by 9, or it turns it by 12. Your goal, of course, is simple: collect the little things, the prizes and the keys, and let the was it out of his cell. But in order to do that, you need to do series of things. But you're doing them intrinsically. You're not looking at the symbols. The symbols weren't really what we wanted them to do. We wanted them to get a sense and be able to subtract or add. So because this knew the outcome was really get them to understand the numbers, and how many times do we write outcomes with the word understand? Don't do that. Use number sense, relate numbers to each other. That's why it was effective. It knew the outcome, and it knew it was a little different than what you would think it was on the surface. Here's another example. This is a game. It's really just a picture of a shack. What's in this picture? I'm just going to pull. If you just looking at the picture, what do you see? Not a trick. People lining up, get soup. Presumably soup, right? It does say soup house. What else? One word. Was that? Poor. Hopefully the poor people, yeah. Poor building, construction, poor people, possibly. Anything else? Earthquake. You see that? I don't see that one, but it's possible I could see an earthquake. Cincinnati, I see that. We could go on for a little while about naming things that are actually in this picture, not like an earthquake, but the point is you might come up with more and more unique answers the longer you had to look at a picture like this. And this was used by a number of library systems throughout the world. In London, they use this. with a project called the Metadata Games. What they did was they were crowdsourcing information about pictures that they were cataloging in their image libraries. And so what they did, they have a website you can go to, it's called Stupid Robot, and you would train said stupid robot what's in the picture. Now, we could go on and name a lot of words, but it's much better if we apply some rules to this. For instance, give them a time limit. You know that in some gamification circles, you time people, it makes a little stress, makes them anxious. It's a basic one. And secondly, a rule 4 to 10 letters long. Okay, you've got a limit. The difference is you can't repeat the same number of letters. So if you use a 5-letter word, you can't use another 5-letter word. You've got to really stretch your brain to think of different ways to describe what you see in the picture. For instance, suit, dress, people, walkway, umbrella, things that are just tiny objects in there, right? Different letters. This means that people are rewarded with more points for being specific, using specific words that are not obvious necessarily at first glance of an image. Now, the reason that that's important is because this is what their goal was. As librarians, as catalogers, they had a goal themselves to get unique words. The highest quality metadata you can get is when you find a specific thing. Instead of that picture just saying dog, which is obvious, it is a dog, and that's correct, it's accurate, but it's not really that useful. Bloodhound, that's a useful word. It's a specific word. That's the kind of things we were looking for. So they said, how can we reward people for being specific and doing what they want to do too, which is name the thing as much as possible. So they forced a rule to encourage that. So when you're making games, that's one of the tenets, one of the tips. Incentivize the behavior that you want, or rather structure rules around what you want and incentivize it after they've obeyed you. It's like quite obey. It sounds manipulative, doesn't it? Let's get to leaderboards. I have to talk about them eventually. These are some of the things you'll always hear when you talk about leaderboards. Encouraging competition. Know where you stand. It's great. You could do the whole global leaderboard. In fact, I'm doing one right now. I'm wearing a pedometer because I'm part of the Global Corporate Challenge. Anybody out there also part of the Global Corporate Challenge? There's my team. We're not doing so great, team. We're like 37th in our company. Yeah. So we could have a global leaderboard. In fact, there is. And when I scroll down the global leaderboard for the Global Corporate Challenge, I see thousands of teams competing against each other. I know where we're ranked. I know where we stand. Leaderboards are used all the time in iOS games, particularly ones by Zynga Gameloft here in Auckland. They make games with leaderboards. In fact, Gameloft has gotten quite good at it, as you'll see in a second. I'll talk about that. But Cityville here, here's a quite example. Has anybody played Cityville or Farmville or any of those games? You get points for doing tasks that you're going to be doing anyway. But if you do them in a particular way, we'll give you more points, and you can earn your right to the top of the leaderboard, and then you get rewarded for being high on the leaderboards, such as most productive city or fastest growing city. Just give you twists on ways to do it. And a time limit, of course. But there is a risk with leaderboards, and this is the risk that I feel a lot of learning programs fall into, and that is they figure that they can just take a leaderboard and slap it on top, and then you have great learning. Or you have great incentivization. Well, there's a few ways that can go wrong, and the first is if you don't want people to compete but to cooperate, you don't necessarily want to have them competing against each other for first place on a leaderboard. The second is because of this. This is some research called the N Effect from 2009, Michigan University there. They researched a number of people taking quizzes, and they would rank these people, and they would then say to some of them, you're competing against 100 people. Other groups, they would say, you're only competing against 10, and you'll get $5 if you do well in the top 20%. They did a number of other correlated studies, but what they found was basically this relationship. The more competitors that you feel you're up against, the less you're motivated by the actual leaderboard. This effect can be illustrated by saying, here's the Fortune 500 list, of course, a very big thing for businesses to be on in the United States. If you were ranked 3 or 4, you're going to compete a whole lot because you're near an arbitrary standard that we have told you is important, number 1. Who doesn't want to be number 1 on the Fortune 500? Rivals at 103 and 104, what do they care at all whether they're 102nd or 106th? They don't. Because there's too many people. They're not related to these other companies very much. There's too many. So the idea is to use leaderboards sparingly in small groups. And when I said that Gameloft has gotten very good at it, they have a game recently that was called Rival Knights. Simple game, you go and you joust against your friends, and if you beat them, it then tells you, or tells them that, hey, your friend beat you, do you want to challenge them? So it feeds back into itself. But the reason it was great is because it never really put more than 10 people on a leaderboard. 10. We can count that many on our hands. That's a good, relatable number. They've done some research at Gameloft where they figured, what is the largest global leaderboard you could possibly do and still motivate behavior? And that's 150, give or take, which isn't surprising for people who have studied group sizes. You need 150 people in your brain, and it's about as much as you can hold. There are some organizations that have made their teams, they just stop growing their business and build a separate factory if they get more than 150 people, because they understand that you don't have that many connections as a human to really know each other and be friends and be competitive with each other past 150. So if you have an organization with that too many people, more than 150, you probably don't want to have a big corporate-wide leaderboard. That's a tip. Here's an example of leaderboards and challenges and things that have worked really well. ClubPsych. ClubPsych is a great show. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to watch this show. It's been on USA Network for about 10 years or so. It's off the air now. But you can get points. Basically, what you would do is you would watch episodes, something you're going to be doing anyway. You get points for doing so. Is this the appropriate response? Somebody got number one. So when you get to the top of this ClubPsych leaderboard, you're going to get real prizes, real things that incentivize them because they care about it. They care about it. Virtual prizes that they cared about because it related to what they already liked. What we're getting at is identifying what it is these users, these players, these learners, whatever you want to call them, what do they want? Let's get to the juice. Right? The thing you need to know is that engagement can't be gamed into existence. What I mean by that is this, and this is a bit of marketing, not going to touch on it much. This was just recently New Zealand Marketing, this last issue, where they looked at loyalty programs, and they found that the vast majority of loyalty programs fail. They fail in that they trim the company's margins, they're spending a lot on this, and they're not getting the rewards that they want because people are having no brand loyalty. Then again, if I'm buying toilet paper, I really don't care what brand it is, right? Even if you give me a card that you punch when I buy it. The point is, this doesn't, gamification, if you make it obvious, too obvious, you're not going to get a lot of buy-in. And in fact, I see this all the time when I see people roll their eyes when they say gamification. Oh, great. It's clunky. It's manipulative looking. People don't pay it any attention because it's just play a game. I'm doing compliance training. What do I want to play a game for? Right? That's true. Done in the wrong way, it can be bad. Right? What we need to do is reward people not with just points for buying toilet paper, but instead with personalization, with emotion. Right? Marketing and learning go hand in hand when it comes to this because you're really trying to appeal to somebody, find out what they want, and give it to them. Right? So, two very quick examples of marketing. Some of the most successful loyalty programs out there, Air New Zealand and Tesco. This one sending you mailings with customized items because of what you have been buying. Big data tracking you to make it a more personal experience. I know big data was mentioned earlier as well. Air New Zealand giving you status for being a Silver Club member. Man, I can't wait till I can get to the Koru Lounge. Fly me somewhere, Nolan. I need to get that silver points. Thank you. If we do the same thing, relate it back to what they want, we can do it. So the question is then, what do we want? Right? So what are we missing? That's the next step. We're about halfway there, and I am running out of time, so let's keep going. Missing something. The magic sauce, human experience that engages you for the long term. So here is a picture of a baby giraffe. So that definition again, I want to revisit it because play is the point. Games are playing. You can lose at them for sure. There's a structured rule set, which is great because it means you can manipulate those rules. But really, play is fun. And I don't mean fun in the frivolous way. I mean in the flow kind of a way. And I'm hoping that you've heard of flow in the past. Flow. Dr. Cheekson's gamification. It's often the only one that people use. So let's look at the others. Let's look at the appeal to play. So what I want to look at is this, the intrinsic motivation ramp. This is probably pretty common, particularly if you've done any reading into marketing or if you've done reading into how to spur creativity in people. Basically, you give them these things and they will do it on their own. Why? Because they have autonomy. By nature, they have to do it on their own. This is what people want. We need to figure out how to give it to them. And why is it? So relatedness, autonomy, mastery, purpose, these are the things that we can say, oh, this person is a bit more loving of mastery. They will love the achievements they get from games, leaderboards and the like. But a lot of social status connections, they need to be the ones that say, I'm a member of the Koru Lounge, are you? They often have big cigars when they say that too, by the way. This is another model, which I'm going to blend in a second. This is the 4 keys to fun, in a frivolous way, especially when we call it serious fun, hard fun, people fun, and easy fun. These are different approaches to engagement. Right? Everybody experiences these in different capacities. This is not a one or the other. This is definitely a spectrum. Play encourages these, all of them, hopefully, in some facet or another. You need all of these experiences. So this is actually a bit of research that was done by Nicole Lazaro. Big chart. This is the actual thing where I nicked it from. I highly recommend reading into it a lot more. They have a white paper about using fun and engagement. The thing is, all of this research I'm talking is not just that people are going away from e-learning designers, developers, because they understand how to motivate people. And it's not just leaderboards, but it's the engaging experience. So in the middle, you've got player experience with all the fun, and then all things tell you what kind of skills and emotions and actions you can have people going through. So the 4 keys to fun, check it out at zeodesign.com. They'll pay me later. Everybody got the picture of that? Cool. So stream through these. There's a lot of I'm just going to gloss over some of the ways you can use this. Relatedness, our socializers. Basically, these are the types of needs they have, which were from the other models. These people, they want to talk with others. They want to compare with each other. Your mechanics and social networks, discussion boards, peer feedback, they're comparing, contrasting your audience when you're designing your learning. An example that we did at Kineo was our Future in Tech program with iPens, where we had ambassadors, and we had an entire peer network with them to help each other out. They were all going into the classroom, and they were all trying to do it for the first time, and so they had no idea how to do it. They talk about science to kids, especially what they do. But they needed to learn it, and so they did it with each other. They all support each other on online discussion boards that we set up. And it's because it's relatedness and peer networking that screenshot is so ugly. It's because it's a discussion board. We were facilitating them getting together. It doesn't need to be flashy to be effective. It doesn't need to be expensive to be effective. It just needs to tickle that fancy in the back of their head that says, I'm talking with people, I'm collaborating. Right? Very quickly, moving on to autonomy. These are the people who like having creativity and choice. These are the people who would rather you just get out of their way and they can get on with their job. They like easy fun, which isn't actually easy. It's more of an exploratory curiosity. They're driven on their own. You may know these people. These free spirits, you might call them, or they're self-starters sometimes. But either way, you give them something to explore. You give them choices in your learning that they are engaging with it, exploring, ticking little boxes. A dark room is a great example of something that tickles the fancy of free spirits because they're exploring an entire system. Right? Having them do long-form answers, essays, not multiple choice. Why would you do that to somebody who's trying to formulate and explore all the different facets of some knowledge? Give them a multiple choice question is tantamount to saying that it's not worth anything. Right? Some examples, a game example, 80 Days is a great iOS game by Inkle Studios. It's a narrative, it's an entire narrative of 80 days around the world told in a kind of a twisted steampunk world. Basically, it's a text adventure pictures, but you're steering said text adventure. All of your decisions allow you to affect the narrative. Think of a branching scenario times 1,000. It's amazing, and I highly recommend you look at it as further research on your own. These are the achievers who and badges and leaderboards and set objectives. Notice this is only one of the broad categories, and this is what people focus on all of the time because it's what they see in those gambling addiction type of games. because it leads to this basic cycle of you're frustrated because you're not doing very well. Then you get fiero. This is the fired up nature that you get when you want to succeed. And then you get relief when you succeed. A little dopamine in your head. One branch. Master example, here's one that's great for simple tasks where you want to get better at it. Our countdown till game related to the McDonald's till game, related to a number of other till games that are out there. Basically, a game that you would see on an iOS app. Boom, 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 go faster, get better at it. Single skill, a small loop, get points. Yay. But one way that games are used. The last one here, Philanthropist. This basically serious fun. They get excitement from changing the world, changing people. Sharing forums, wikis where they can just share what they know because it's valuable information and they want to give it away. Also doing tasks that are repetitive. There's a rhythm, set collections, things like that are great for philanthropists as mechanics. They need to know why though. Here's some great examples of that. Tilt World, made by Nicole Lazaro, who is the instigator of Zio Designs there with their 4 Keys to Fun. And Givling, I'm enrolled in Givling. I've got a lot of student loans. I can't wait till it's my turn. My wife is playing this game all the time, and it works. They've paid off 3 or 4 people's student loans in the $30,000, $40,000 range by people playing games. They've got a bigger purpose, though. Simple trivia games. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. There's a purpose. Here's the last picture you can take of a chart. The learners and ramps on the 4 keys. This is a mushing of those 2 models. And it shows how people are interacting with the system, or they're interacting with other users in a structured or unstructured way. Again, I nicked this from online. This gentleman from Gamified UK. Andre, can never pronounce his last name. Look it up, Gamified UK. Almost done. And I know I'm almost done because I have a picture of a baby otter. So darn cute. Did you know they hold hands while they float, while they sleep? It's adorable. They don't drift away. More to games than just leaderboards. So the question of what else can games do is you can tell narratives. And I don't just mean branching scenarios, but that is a way to do it. I mean in telling narratives that relate to the people. I mean giving them an experience that allows them to feel good about themselves at the end because they're making a difference. Going back to a dark room. This is an actual screenshot from a dark room. I've played it for a while, and you'll notice that you get a lot more buttons than just stoke fire in the upper left-hand corner. Right? It grows, and it grows, and it grows, but it never feels overwhelming because you're doing it at such a pace that you are in control of. It's an amazing experience to kind of open it up on your own terms. That's one of those key things. You're giving autonomy to the user, to be able to give it up. People are scared of games because it means they're giving control to the user instead of themselves. It's so much easier, like it is for me right now, to just talk about games than it is to play. It changes the mode of game once you've gotten used to it. In a dark room, you start going into open world. A whole entirely different thing. You're exploring a whole world. There is a narrative in that game, and I'm not going to spoil it, so I'll just go right to the end here. These are the 3 questions to ask yourselves when you're thinking about game. You can talk. Probably the most obvious thing are, what are the learners' motivations? And I mean that in terms of how do they like to have fun? How can we then incorporate that using our content, using our material? There's more than just a high score. Unless, of course, you're talking about salespeople. That's really all they care about, right? What are we measuring? This is probably one of the more important questions. We think we're measuring our success in a certain test or outcomes and things like that. Whenever you measure something, you're telling the people that it's important. Going back to a classic game, Dungeons and Dragons from the 70s, they would measure success in points and gold, which you got killing monsters. You can guess what people did. Every game experience in a game that is killing monsters. You're guiding the behavior based on how you reward. So what are you doing? Are you grading? And then going back to grading means they're going to game it too. People will find all kinds of loopholes to get experience points. People find loopholes to just test on compliance if you're not finding their motivations. Okay? So the last slide I've got is this, Journey. This is actually a game, Journey. It's what we do as designers. We bring the learners on a journey. Hopefully it's their journey, though, a guided journey that they are the ones steering. That's what games do. They allow people to steer their own learning in a structured environment that you've set up. You set the structure and let them go. Give up the control. Let them steer. Also, I recommend looking this game up too. Thank you very much.
A couple of minutes for questions for Richard. Anybody with some questions? Game.
I'll be here all day, folks. You can ask me games. Yes?
Sorry. I know Kineo. I've researched your site and I know the sorts of things that you offer. I work for a private training establishment, and my question to you is, do we have to outsource this kind of expertise, or what should we be looking for to be able to have staff within the organisation with these sorts of capabilities?
It's very likely you may need to outsource it for people who have already done it, just because it saves a lot of time, right? And game developers, people who are used to games and thinking technology, that's usually the kind of people you want to approach, for sure. Either that or do your a lot of it. So yeah, I'd say outsourcing it is probably the best, at least for consultation.
I think one of the as well as, you know, most of us who are educationalists is actually getting that marrying between someone who does gamification. I used to work in the design industry, so I understand about gamification, but marrying up the education element with gamification, and I think those people are quite behind. I know that you have them.
Yeah, you're right. It is very gamification side. We're looking at it from the wrong angle, aren't we? We're trying to say, I want to teach them this, as opposed to what do I want them to explore. So yes, most education packages in the past have been very to find, because they are a top-down approach. They are very much saying, engage in our learning, and we will, you know, it'll be fun, right? And I always have a difficult time with that because people are assuming then that learning or the thing that they're learning about isn't fun to begin with. So really, we just need to find what is fun about doing something, and I say fun in the 4 keys to fun kind of a way, and then encourage them to do that instead of exposure to knowledge. This is the 21st century. We don't need to simply expose people to knowledge anymore as learning. That's a reference book, right? You can look that up, YouTube it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Durham. Congratulations,
Thank you.
69. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Hope that answered your question.
And if it doesn't,